Good afternoon, everybody. Welcome to InspireSmall.biz and the Indy's Trusted Servant Show with yours truly, Danny O'Malia, Indy's Trusted Servant. Before I get going very far, I want to thank Ryan for hanging in with me here. I was hospitalized for 31 days with a bad case of pneumonia, but I'm back on the air now, and it's a real pleasure. What's the Indy's Trusted Servant Show on InspireSmall.biz? Well, I like to describe it as lively local small biz and community talk where you can feel the pulse of Indy. What's Indy's Trusted Servant? Well, that's me, Danny O'Malia. I do customer service training and keynote speaking about customer service. It's all about the culture of the organization. I learned all of that at the hand of the master, my late father, Joe O'Malia, at O'Malia Food Markets, but really from about the age of 9 or 10 when he had a little store in Broad Ripple that he actually lost and came back 10 years later and started O'Malia Food Markets. And one of the things I learned was never, ever, ever give up. At any rate, back to the show, Indy's Trusted Servant. It's up every Monday at 3 o'clock on InspireSmall.biz/Indy's Trusted Servant, and all prior episodes of the show are available for your viewing. My guest today is a good friend from Catholic Business Exchange, and he actually got me on the air at WITT radio some time ago.
7 years ago.
7 years ago, and that kind of morphed into this YouTube series that I've got with Ryan here. Russ Dodge is a big radio guy, but we're not really going to talk about radio today. Russ approached me at Catholic Business Exchange a while back with the idea of talking about bad customer service. And I'm going to let him start off with, I think you want to do AT&T first, or you want to do Best Buy first?
Well, a little bit of background first, though, that back in my days as a Gente General de Radio Latina en La Que Buena, in English, that's the general manager of Radio Latina and La Que Buena Radio, I hired Danny to come in and do customer service training for my staff because I felt that we needed that, and it was very successful. Learned a lot of stuff for the tricks of the trade that are good things that I'm able to use in my everyday life. And I always love to tell people, if you got the need for some upgrading of your customer service, Danny's your guy.
Well, thank you, Russ.
A lot of good customer service training over the years, but I thought of Danny right away when I recently moved to Brownsburg. And so I had a lot of different things that I had to do as far as moving and contracting with different companies and all that. And, some of it went very well and some of it didn't go so well. So we're going to talk about, as Hugo Montenegro used to say in one of those one-hit wonders of the 60s, the good, the bad, and the ugly of customer service. So you mentioned the first one, AT&T, and I'll start with that.
Let's start with that.
It was bizarre. I've been a long, long time AT&T customer. Matter of fact, when they bought out Singular for mobile service, I was with them from day one, and prior to that I always had AT&T home service, had home internet. So I looked at it as when I'm moving, okay, this is easy. I call and they'll get me set up in my new location. And the key thing for me, with doing my business work from home, I needed internet the first day that I was there. Simple as that. So I arranged.
But before you get going too far, were you using them for internet, the computer, and your TV?
I was not using them for TV.
Not for TV.
Yeah,
what about your phone?
I have Dish Network for TV. My regular landline phone was an AT&T phone too. So I had the combination of a cell phone, a home phone, and home internet.
Just out of curiosity, are you using a landline in your new home?
I have one. I have not used it.
Yeah, nobody has them anymore.
I'll explain that a little bit later. I had no desire for it when it boiled down to 98% of the calls coming in on that were calls that I didn't want or need, or
Yeah.
So you just didn't want it anymore. So anyway, I get a hold of them and they said, okay, we will be there that first day you move in. And I said, great. They said your internet speed will be a lot faster. And of course, then they lobbied me for the TV. Add the TV service in, which I didn't have a great desire to do because I've been with Dish Network for 20 years, and I can explain on the neutral to positive side, customer service from Dish Network, but that's a little later in the show. But anyway,
if we get there,
yeah, the day of the show, the day that I moved, the guy shows up, punctual as he needs to be, and looks at my setup there. And this is a brand new home. When we had it built, it's a Lennar development. Great home, great builders. They were good with their customer service, but it's pre-wired. So all they got to do is come in and plug in, and the guy from AT&T takes a look at it and says, our new fiber optics are not compatible with what Lennar has wired here. And I go, what? And I had this punch list of things that you could do, everything from utility connection to, different services. And on the list of getting your home wired, the number one on the list was AT&T. And I think Spectrum was the second one. I don't remember that Comcast was on that. But anyway, the guy comes out and I said, I can't do that. And I said, well, what's the workaround? There's got to be a workaround. Said, yeah, we can bore some holes in the side of your home and run the wires in. And I said, well, okay. I'm very skeptical at this point. Then I said, I have a land computer upstairs that's hardwired. That is my biggest issue. That's got to be working perfectly. He says, well, we'd have to come in through your roof and through your back walls. And oh, by the way, it's $140 for each one of the walls we'd have to go through. And there were 3 of them. And I go, no, you're not. The guy says to me, are you canceling? I said, no, you're not delivering what I ordered. And, at that point, I said, this isn't going to work. What do you suggest? And then the guy kind of turned on a dime, which surprised the heck out of me. He obviously was a less than content employee of the company. He was basically doing his job. And
they weren't helping him to do his job.
Well, yeah.
Now, this is where the culture thing comes in.
Yeah, and so and he says to me, he says, your best workaround to get what you need is you either go with Spectrum or you go with Comcast. And I said, okay, and that's what it'll be. Fortunately, I had a good friend in Tampa, that Annette, who was my media rep when I did a lot of media buying down there, and she works for Spectrum, which is one of their major hubs. And she told me what to do and what not to do, and they would take really good care of me. And she says, you're very happy with her home internet service. So I make a couple of phone calls, and they respond pretty quickly. Also tell me that if I bundle it up with my cell phone, which, by the way, I had told the AT&T guy as he left, he said, I am canceling everything I have with AT&T, which was my cell phone and my wife's cell phone. And we're just not going to be AT&T customers ever again. So anyway, Spectrum ends up being the company that we went with. They were pretty good. They came in a timely fashion. They installed everything. There were a couple little glitch things that we had to figure out. We figured them out. Everything connected perfectly. And I'm not a technical guy at all when it comes to some of this stuff. So I had to, for the cell phone, had to keep my number, had to jump through a whole bunch of hoops. AT&T didn't make it easy to do that, to change the service. So I finally was able to get everything connected through Spectrum, and then I found out, well, gee, my iPad doesn't work. And I suspected that might be the case because it's an older iPad. So they got me a new one, and it works fine too. So everything is connected, and wow, I was very pleased with the service that I get. It's like any other company. You have your outages here, there, and wherever, but
nobody's
better,
perfect.
No better or no worse than anything else. But it's very compatible, and I saved a lot of money too, by the way.
So what Russ has done here, and when I do my customer service training programs, I talk about every customer is a potential advocate, and you've advocated for Spectrum.
Yes,
and is a potential assassin as well if you screw up, and you've assassinated AT&T.
Oh, I went on social media and I let everybody know what the heck happened.
That's one thing. You've got this show and you've got social media that you do.
Yeah.
Sometimes it's just word of mouth. Don't go shop there. Don't buy from these guys, because blah, 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 right?
Well, a good example is in my new neighborhood, it's Laurelton in Brownsburg, and they started a page for Laurelton neighbors, which was really kind of nice. It's been a really cool page. And sure enough, a couple people asked about that, and I didn't even have to go down that route. My wife Judy posted something about the negative experience with AT&T before I could.
There's two assassins right there, right? That's yeah.
So it was interesting just to see that happen as quick as it did. And you know, I know at least one neighbor across the street did deal with having the holes bored through, but she probably didn't have to connect to a landline computer anywhere. So.
Well,
you just didn't want it. A brand new home, you want holes in the side of your home?
No, you don't.
No.
And this is one of the things that's one of the companies I assassinate all the time is Indianapolis Star. You would think technology would make things easier for everybody. Well, and look at some of the elections that we got going on that are going to take God knows how long. We were better off when everybody was just filling out a paper ballot. It's very frustrating when technology should make things better. And it makes things worse sometimes, right?
Yeah.
Or why, if you guys are such a great technology company, which you would think AT&T would be, why can't you figure this out? It's very frustrating.
Oh, the guy that was the installer there went way out of school when he told me there are lawsuits back and forth between Lennar and AT&T over this issue, because Lennar is a national home builder, so they know how to do this right. And I've watched what they've done. They're still got about 15 or so units that they're selling out of hundreds in this development. So it's just about done. The side-by-side villas, which is one of the ones we're in, there's one street that goes down from us, and those are the last ones are on that street. And so I watch these guys in action, and they for the most part, do a pretty good job. And, when there's something that isn't quite right, always get to be good friends with the maintenance person at the company.
You need a contact at a company.
Oh,
right?
This guy, not only could he take care of a few things that needed to be taken care of, but gave me some heads up of things that I could do that were perfectly legit to do. I needed shelving in my garage. He said, go around, and when you see the stuff that's being discarded, you see something you want, it's all yours. As a matter of fact, the
who would have thought of that?
first batch of stuff that I needed for a border in the garage, they delivered it to me. Right the day we moved in. So I look at always have an advocate somewhere. That's good.
That's good, and that's extra customer service. They delivered it to you. That's cool.
In the interest of time, I won't elaborate on all the other stuff, but stuff that had nothing to do with the house. That was good practical advice from a guy who's one of these jack of all trade guys. And, that's always good to have in what you're doing. So I look at my AT&T experience wasn't good. My Spectrum experience pretty much was. But I wasn't done with everything that I was dealing with as far as the good, the bad, and the ugly.
And you've just advocated for the home builder too. What's the name of the home builder again?
Lennar.
Lennar. Okay.
Yeah, they're national out of Florida, and they're at least all over the eastern half of the country. I don't know how much out west they are, but
okay. Let's move on to Best Buy, I have my own Best Buy story I want to share. So you shoot first. Now, did this have to do with your move to the new house as well?
Yes. Yeah. Yes. What I decided to do was we had a nice mantle in our living room area that was perfect to mount a very large smart TV. So we picked out a 75-inch TV, shopped a little to see where we'd get a good price. And the price at Best Buy was very, very good. And I'm like, oh, this is great. This is going to have all those lights, bells, and whistles that I didn't have on my other big screen TV that I want. So I'm pretty excited. It took a little while to get it delivered, but I knew that when I bought it. It was going to be 3 weeks to get it delivered and installed.
Yeah, the supply chain issue.
Yeah.
Rears its ugly head.
Well, it got to be very interesting because the day of the event, they tell you, they expect you to be there all day, and then they narrow it down. They said, "Well, it'll be 7 a.m. to 1 p.m." I said, "Okay, I can deal with that." And then the morning of, I get a voice message saying they'll be there by 10 o'clock. I said, "That's great.
Oh.
I'm happy about that." Well, 10 o'clock comes, no show, and so I called the toll-free number, and they said, "Well, you're scheduled for 7 to 1." I said, "I got a voicemail from you that said they'd be here by 10 o'clock. I don't know anything about that. And I said, well, okay. 1 o'clock comes, no installers. So I called closer to 2 o'clock, and I go, what the heck? He said, why did you have to have your TV delivered from Greenwood. And I said, what the heck are you talking about? I bought it in Avon, 3 miles from my house. Well, evidently they had to go pick it up at the Greenwood store, which must be their warehouse or something like that. So they finally get there like 4 o'clock. And at this point, I'm not too happy. Now I have the Dish Network people in the house. They're taking care of connecting all my TVs, and I purposely scheduled that so that Dish would be properly connected to my new TV. And the Dish guy knew what the hell he was doing. He was good. I have 4 TVs, and he even showed me how I might want a nice sound bar for the new TV I'm getting. So anyway, these 2 installers all they want to do is get the heck out of there. Contract people. They're not getting paid by the hour, they're getting paid by the job. And probably the way their day was, they should have been done at 1 o'clock in the afternoon. They weren't. So they're hustling. So meanwhile, I'm busy with the people from Dish, the guy from Dish, and the TV isn't installed properly. My wife sees it, doesn't realize that, sends them on their way. I come down and I said, well, I can't, the sound bar is supposed to go underneath the TV, between the TV and the mantle. Well, the TV goes sideways and comes out, but it doesn't go up and down.
Now, this is the Best Buy people doing this?
Yeah.
Okay.
So it was not installed, and they knew that there was a sound bar going in there. So the guys, the only option was to connect it into the mantle, which was not really a good thing. Judy's going, you ruined the mantle, and it's not as bad as you think it is, but it still was not what was expected. So I'm desperately trying to get the TV reset. So I have an appointment for a Saturday morning, and the Friday night I'm getting a message that you need to schedule your appointment.
Best Buy needed to help you get the TV set up?
Yeah, well, they were sending the installers back to correct the mistake.
Okay.
Yeah, okay. So anyway, I go and I like, what the heck is this? And there's an email there that tells me schedule your appointment. Your next available date is September 4th. This is now middle of August, so it's like 3 weeks later. I said, what? I had an appointment for the next morning.
Yep.
So I called them, and they said, well, your appointment was canceled. Is anybody going to tell me? I mean, I'm just mystified by this, and I'm very upset at this point in time. I thought, what the heck are you guys all about? This is ridiculous. And finally, after just continuing with this person on the other end, acknowledged to me that they had parted ways with their installers, which were the 2 people that screwed up on me. So they didn't have anybody. So it's they promised me the store manager will call me. Of course, that call never came.
Yep.
So when I finally find the store manager a week or plus later, he didn't know anything about that. So I told him what the issue was, and it took him a while. But he was a store manager, so his job is to try and make things right. So he finally gets me set up, and it's still going to be like 3 more weeks. And I said, that's just not acceptable. And he said, here's what they didn't tell you before. You should have taken that September 4th, and they would have, and tell them you needed an earlier date, and if it was a cancellation, they would have put you in. Well, that's what he did, and sure enough, like a week later, there was a cancellation, and they got me in there. This time, the person that came was someone who specialized in fixing damage. So obviously, he must have been having to do a lot of that because he knew what the heck he was doing.
Well, they fired the installers.
Yeah,
Right.
Yeah, they set this person out of the Westfield store, so I think this was his area of specialty. So I look at it, I've got this wonderful TV, and it's finally how I need it to be and everything else, but boy, I wasted so much time with terrible, terrible customer service from these guys. And if you don't need any customer service there, their prices are good, but if you need anything special,
with the technology aspect of it, you're liable to need customer service.
Absolutely,
right?
Yeah.
So I have my own complaints about Best Buy, but I'm going to share a story from one of my clients. And it's so similar, some of the stuff, to what you just described.
Yep.
So this was a fast food franchise group that owned like 400 Wendy's and Long John Silver's in 4 states, and I was speaking to them in Terre Haute, which was kind of a midpoint of all their restaurants. These were their division managers and store managers and so forth, and I asked for a bad customer service story, and a guy raised his hand and said, I want to tell one about Best Buy. And I go, well, good, I don't like Best Buy either. Here's his story. He had a kid that was going to college, and he wanted to buy a PC for the kid to take to college with him. This is 10 years ago, okay? But he had sworn off Best Buy. But Best Buy had an ad in the paper saying this PC is available for this great price, which you just, that's similar to your experience. Come in and get them while supplies last. He said, I didn't trust Best Buy, so I called the local store. Do you have the PCs there? Yes, we do. We got a stack of them. I'll be there in 20 minutes. He goes in there, he gets the PC, he takes it to the counter, and the lady starts typing. And if you've got somebody that's typing for a minute, there's probably something wrong, right?
Yeah.
And so she finally looks at him and says, I'm sorry, sir, I can't sell you this computer. Why not? Well, it's not in the system. Well, you had it in the paper, and I called, and here's the computer. She goes, oh, I can't do anything. Get me the manager. Well, the manager comes up, and he's the guy he talked to on the phone when he called and had said, come on in, we can, we'll take care of you. He says, I can't do anything about it. We can't sell these computers. They're sitting on the shelf, and they can't sell them. Okay? So the marketing people that put the ad in the paper don't know that it's not in the system. And it was the Westfield store, coincidentally.
Yeah.
Okay? I'd already had my problems with Best Buy. This story, on top of everything else, A isn't talking to B isn't talking to C, and there was so much of that in your description of Best Buy with your home TV. Again, technology should make something better, but if you don't have the people in place, and you don't have the training in place, and you don't have the culture that wants to try to make things better, you're going to screw up, and you're going to make a lot of customers really mad.
Very, very,
right?
Very true. One of the things that I found is sometimes it's best to find where you can get the good deal and then have somebody that you know and you trust take care of all your installation and connections and all that. And I'll put in a plug for great customer service from Ryan Henry, who's sitting across the way from me right now.
Oh, speaking of technology, there he is.
Last December, my wife Judy got 2 brand new laptop computers from Costco. Now, Costco, that's great, but you know that when you get them, you're going to get a great price, but you probably need to have somebody else take care of stuff for you.
Whether you're buying tires or whatever at Costco.
We knew that, so I got a hold of Ryan and I said, okay, here's what needs to happen. And it was a reasonable amount of work, if I remember, because we had to sync the computers and sync everything else we had, which, by the way, paid off when I switched over to Spectrum. That stuff was already linked, and it wasn't terribly difficult to do. But Ryan came in, and 3 hours later, he's got stuff functioning. I think you took one of the computers with you to program it properly, and everything was working just fine. So that was, I was very pleased, because if I had counted on trying to figure it out myself, that wouldn't have happened. And I'm not so sure Costco had anybody. So it was a very positive experience.
Ryan himself is his own culture. Right?
I totally agree with that.
He's a great culture, but that's the thing. If you don't have the culture, and part of what you're dealing with both Best Buy and Costco, I think, is you'll get a great price, but you might have to spend more to get it installed, or to get the tires put on your car, or whatever it is that you bought at Costco. You might have to think about what the real cost to all this, not to mention your time.
Yeah.
Okay?
Oh, yeah. Well, the time was the biggest issue, because I spent time at the house waiting for different people to come on installations, and we also had delivery delays with furniture that we got, smaller issues.
Sure.
And in one case, we bought a bunch of new stuff from Ashley, and one of the items was a back order, and they said, absolutely, it's going to be up to 6 weeks, but it was what we wanted, and we were okay with that because it was replacing an existing couch, so we were fine. And the only hiccup that they had there is the specific day that they were delivering, and it wasn't the couch, but it was the dining room table. They showed up a day early because they're bringing all this stuff in from Chicago. Now, we knew this, but they showed up at like 5 o'clock at our house as Judy's on her way out the door. She says, "You're lucky you caught me."
Well, that's better than coming a day late.
Well, that's true too. But Judy didn't have time to inspect it, and there was some damage. So we're waiting for the replacement table. It's not that the table's not usable, and they were very good about, we'll replace it.
Remember the Seinfeld episode with the cable guy?
Yeah.
Where I think it was Kramer that was getting even with the cable guy, right? And when you were telling the story before about the 7 to 1 o'clock, and it turns out, then he called for 10 o'clock, and then it turns out to be 4 o'clock. Now they've wasted your whole day.
Oh, yeah.
You just hate that stuff. Well,
No,
Russ,
it's rough.
I appreciate you coming in.
Oh, this is
it's
absolutely
good to talk
fantastic.
To you.
It's just great that you're back in the saddle doing all this great stuff again, and I'm happy to be one of your first ones.
You are the first.
Oh, I am the first. Well,
yeah, you are.
That's always a good situation. I know we'll connect on some future stuff here very, very quickly, and we'll talk after the show about that. So,
well, I'm glad to have you on the show, and next week we got a small business that has grown quite a bit. It's Steve Summer with Awnings Partners Manufacturing here in Indianapolis. And I think he's going to have a real good small business growth story for you. So thanks for watching the Indy's Trusted Servant Show on InspireSmall.biz. Thanks to Ryan Henry for having this show on his website. And thanks to you, Russ.
And thank you, Danny, for having me on the show.
Good to see you again.